on Thursday, May 23rd, 2024, and I will call to order the Electric Vehicle Supply Equipment Stakeholder Work Group meeting for today. I will begin by reminding everyone to please mute your microphones and only turn them on when you're speaking. And please also announce your name when you're speaking so we can make sure that everything is recorded. Again, this is Steve Bruno, presiding officer. Anna, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. And if you could, everybody, turn on your cameras as well so we can make sure that we have a quorum of everyone. Justin Wilson.
Present.
Denise Cosarelli.
Here.
Francesca Wall. Lindsay Stiegel.
Here.
George Johnson.
Here.
Brian Moran. I know
Here.
Mr. Oh, there he is. Josh Tynert.
Here.
Robert Pitzel. David Donahue.
I'm here.
Thank you. Tyler Nicholson.
Here.
Michael Chamberlain. Jamie Mitchell.
Good afternoon. Jamie's here.
Thank you, sir. Mike Wisco.
I'm present.
And presiding officer Steve Bruno.
I am present, thank you.
You have a quorum.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
All right, work group members, are there any comments on the meetings of the minutes from the meeting of January 9th? If not, I would ask for a motion and a second to approve the minutes, please.
Mike Wisco will make the motion.
Thank you.
Second. That's for a second.
Do we have a second?
Second. George Johnson, second.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Anna, could you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Justin Wilson.
And this is just a
Yes.
motion to approve the minutes, please. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Denise Cosarelli.
Yes.
Lindsay Stiegel.
Yes.
George Johnson.
Yes.
Brian Moran.
Yes.
Josh Tynert.
Yes.
David Donahue.
Yes.
Tyler Nicholson.
Yes.
Jamie Mitchell.
Yes.
Mike Wisco.
Yes.
And presiding officer Steve Bruno. Motion.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Anna. We're going to switch items D and E just so we give a little bit more time for one person who had signed up for public comment. So I'm going to move to the staff reports from the executive office. That'll be delivered by me, Steve Bruno, Deputy Executive Director at TDLR and presiding officer of this work group. I wanted to give, per the agenda, an update on our strategic plan. As many of you may be familiar, every 2 years, every state agency is required to submit a strategic plan. And we do ours a little bit differently here at TDLR. We like to go out. We held 4 meetings across the state. We also held a virtual meeting and asked questions virtually to gather input about the way we're conducting our business today, about the way licensees think their businesses will look in the future. And we do all that to create our strategic plan and give us some strategic initiatives and ideas and strategies to work on in the future to continue providing the best service that we can to our licensees. The strategic plan is going to be due on June 1st. And after that time, you'll be able to find it on our website. So I encourage you all and everyone listening to please take a look at that. It's not on the agenda, but I would like to give an additional update on an important piece of business that happened a couple days ago. On Tuesday, May 21st, our commission met and named Courtney Arbor as the new executive director of the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. Ms. Arbor comes to us with a long career in state government. She's currently at the Texas Workforce Commission, where she serves as Workforce Development Director. That's a position that she's had since 2016, and we at TDLR are very excited to welcome her to our team. She will begin her tenure on June the 1st of this year. That's all I have for the staff reports from the executive office. And we will now move to public comment. We'll begin, we actually have a public commenter here in the room with us in Austin. We'll begin with that comment. And at this time, I will call on Mr. Buzz Smith. Mr. Smith is Executive Director of the Texas Electric Transportation Resources Alliance. Welcome, sir. Thank you for coming. And you've now got 3 minutes to provide your public comment.
Okay, this will be pretty quick.
Awesome.
First off, thank you all for holding this public meeting regarding the draft rules for the licensing and regulation of EVSEs in Texas. The Texas Electric Transportation Resources Alliance is gratified with the fee structure for registration, renewal, and stickers, as well as the including of the technical references that we supplied in response to the Department of Agriculture's proposed rules. The EVSE registration process fees and inspections will prove important in reassuring Texas EV drivers and to moving EV adoption forward in Texas. One of our business members has asked that EVSE installers be able to provide the stickers that will be displayed on the EVSEs in order to prevent any delay between the installation and operation of these important facilities. And so we'd like to provide that as a suggestion today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Let's see. I know we had someone who had signed up to give virtual public testimony, public comment on it. Do we have that person?
We do not.
Okay. Well, I will reserve that person's right. If we are able to find them, we'll bring them in during the meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I'm sorry, one thing before we get to the rules review, if everybody could turn on your cameras, all the work group members. The public cannot see you unless you have your camera on. Thank y'all so much.
Thanks, On. Before I call on Mark Gladney to walk us through the draft rules.
It looks like our public commenter just popped in.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Then let's go, and I will now call on Mr. Matthew Nelson, who will have 3 minutes to speak. Mr. Nelson, thank you for being here with us. Please state your name and who you represent, and you will have 3 minutes to address the work group.
Hello, my name is Matt Nelson. Can you all hear me before I get going here?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Terrific. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Matt Nelson, and I'm the Director of Energy Policy at Walmart. I appreciate the opportunity to share Walmart's informal feedback on the TDLR's draft EV charging regulations. In Texas, Walmart operates nearly 600 stores, employs more than 175,000 associates, and spends more than $100 billion annually with Texas suppliers. Walmart recently announced that we are planning to deploy fast chargers at thousands of our stores and clubs to provide a reliable, affordable, and convenient charging experience across the state and across the country. Specifically today, Walmart wanted to express our appreciation to TDLR for proposing a regulatory structure that leverages existing standards and best practices, often by reference. A consistent regulatory environment across jurisdictions creates consistent customer experiences. We share TDLR's goals here, and I hope to offer a few specific suggestions with those goals in mind. First, regarding the receipts and price transparency proposed provisions, the draft regulations include content and delivery requirements that differ from the requirements adopted by the National Conference of Weights and Measures in Handbook 44. Walmart respectfully recommends that Texas adopt the Handbook 44 receipt and price transparency requirements in whole to create consistency across states. Second, the draft regulations present unintended regulatory uncertainty for businesses opening charging stations, specifically between June of 2023, when the statute took effect, and March of 2025. We would like to work with TDLR staff to identify and share these specific concerns. Walmart also respectfully encourages TDLR to establish a variance process allowing stations built during that time period to apply for additional compliance time only if it turns out to be necessary and needed. Third, the draft regulations require complaint instructions to be posted via a sticker on a screen and also in the transaction receipt. Walmart suggests that the charging providers be required to inform consumers by one of these options, not by all three. Finally, the National Conference of Weights and Measures Handbook 44 exempted DC fast chargers from what's known as accuracy testing requirements until 2028 in recognition that there actually isn't testing technology and capability available today. Walmart urges Texas to clarify that it is not mandating NTEP certification for DC fast chargers until 2028 in order to create consistency with the deadline in the Handbook 44 requirement, even though we recognize that you're proposing to adopt Handbook 130 by reference. Again, thank you for the opportunity to comment. We appreciate the thoughtful and consultative process that you've already established here, and we look forward to being a resource to the work group and a helpful participant in this process. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We appreciate those comments. Next, I'm going to call on Mark Gladney in our general counsel's office to walk us through the draft rules. And Mark, I'll defer to you on how you'd like to take comment from work group members. Before I call on you to walk us through those, I just wanted to, first of all, go back to our first meeting and do a quick review. As you all recall, work group members, when we first came together, we said that today was one of the key moments that we were going to have, where we're going to look at some draft rules. You all were divided. Your work group was divided into smaller work groups, working with not only Mark, but members from every division of our staff. And first, let me thank you, each and every staff member who contributed their time and expertise to this first draft that we're going to look at. I want to talk a little bit about what to expect after today's meeting. We'll be walking through these draft comments, making some possible adjustments or tweaks. And then what's going to happen, these have been shared with our work group members. These have also been posted on our website for the public in what we call an advanced look. We will then move to our official look. That's where draft rules will be submitted to the Texas Register. And once those are submitted, we'll have 30 days where we will ask the public to provide, and in each work group member, if you'd like to provide written comments. We are required by law to respond to those comments. Mark will prepare all those, and then I anticipate another meeting of this work group to go over those comments, to discuss them. And then final comments will go to our commission for ultimate adoption. That, as you all know, and you may recall, is required to happen before December of this year. And based on meeting today on May 21st, I feel very confident that we will meet and probably even exceed that deadline. So again, thank you very much to everyone who's participated so far. I'm very excited for the walkthrough of this draft that we have. And Mark, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Steve. For the record, Mark Gladney, Assistant General Counsel for the EVSE program. Welcome back, everyone, to the EVSE Stakeholder Work Group. Steve kind of stole a lot of my thunder in my opening statement, but today's meeting is your opportunity to discuss these draft working rules that were sent to you last week after having met with the two committees that Steve had referenced, the Compliance Committee and the Registration Committee. And we've taken your input, and staff has had numerous meetings to work up the draft that I'm going to share with you and that you've already seen regarding this program. Today's meeting, we're here to elicit your responses and participation so that we can present the best set of rules possible for the industry and the public. So the way that we'll probably proceed here, and the way we usually do rules work groups, is that I'm going to go section by section, and ask if you have any comments or proposed edits to the rule language. We may make changes right here at this meeting. It just kind of depends on what the change is. If not, we will note it on the right margin of the rules and go back, staff will go back internally and discuss any comments or edits that y'all propose to make to this rule package. So as Steve said, once we finish here, staff is going to go back. We'll consider the comments and edits, this draft will be evaluated internally, and a final draft, as Steve said, will be posted as like an advanced look. Once a final draft is completed, then it will go to the governor's office for their final approval before it actually gets published in the Texas Register. And then, of course, after the Texas Register publication, there'll be a 30-day public comment period in which we are expecting that there will be some comments on it. And once we get the 30-day period over with, then staff will go back and relook at the comments, and they will be tabulated, and we will be drafting responses. And as Steve said, that we will most likely have another work group meeting just to discuss whatever public comments that we get in. After that, once we get a finalized draft, after all the public comments are evaluated and weighed and determined whether or not they're going to be put in the draft rule package, we will set this to go to the commission for adoption consideration. SB 1001 and 1732 give us until December 1st to adopt rules, but this rule package is very likely to be adopted at the October commission meeting. So we're moving pretty quickly. So we would expect adoption and effective rules probably by December 1st, 2024. I mean, don't hold me to that, but at the rate we're moving, I think that we probably will be somewhere around that date. From the rule chapter that's been sent out to the public, if you'll notice, this is a pretty lean rule chapter. It's not unlike a few other administrative rules on the subject that we've seen in other states. As the industry progresses, we expect that the rules will mature as well. So the rule chapter may be subject to change as the EV market grows. This rule chapter is the department's early foray into this market for regulatory purposes. So having said all that, we have a limited time today at this meeting, so we ask that the number and length of comments from the work group members be kept to a minimum. But we're very interested in what everyone has to say. Everyone here and listening brings unique viewpoints and expertise to the table, and TDLR recognizes it and has traditionally used such input to craft effective rules, and today is certainly no different. So having said that, what I would like to do is to share the draft rules on the screen so that y'all can see it. And as I said, we'll be going section by section to discuss whether or not you have any edits, comments, things of that nature. And so I'm going to try to do that now if technology works with me. So I'm trying. See if it's this one. I think it's this. Yeah, I think it's this one. Okay, can you all see the rules?
Yes.
Okay, are they large enough for you to see, or do I need to make them larger?
They're okay for me.
Okay. Hearing no objection from anyone else, then I'm just going to assume that they are. Okay. All right. Again, these are the draft proposed rules. They're not finalized. It's still a work in progress. So we're going to go through these things again by section, and I'll ask you if you got any comments or edits. So we'll first start with subchapter A, general provisions. 96.1 speaks for itself. It just simply delineates the chapters in which form the foundation the statutory chapters that form the foundation for these rules, which are Chapter 51, 1305, and 2311. Okay. And, just as a note, the legislature, when it passed 1001 and 1732, we kind of think that 1732 might have been a little bit of an afterthought, but it ended up getting passed. So we have two Chapter 2311s in the Occupations Code. One is entitled Electric Vehicle Supply Equipment, and the other one is Electric Vehicle Charging Stations. Both of them apply to this set of rules. I'm assuming there are no questions, comments, or edits related to 96.1. Maybe I shouldn't assume, but are there any?
Yeah, I
Okay.
have a question.
Sure.
This is Brian Moran, Racetrack. And, one of the things I know how you described, Brian, the evolution of this section and how it's influenced by statute. But one of the things I would suggest considering, and maybe this is in the parking lot, is to make these terms consistent with NEVI requirements. That way, they'll be easier to implement across all users.
Okay. Are you speaking about 96.1 right now, or are you in 96.10?
Yeah, I thought we moved there.
No, not yet. Well, since we don't have any comments on 96.1, we're moving to 96.10. So, Mr. Moran, let's see. You'd like to have the comments more in line with, you said, which requirements in this or in NEVI?
Would be to, I guess, since, these are already statutory defined terms, there really isn't any flexibility, but, in the future, if we could try and make the definitions consistent with what's happening across the rest of the country, that would be helpful, I think, for all users.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing I have to say, and this applies for the entire rules, we are limited by what the statutes say. We can't just go in and change a statute. The statute uses a particular set of language, and we are not, and we don't have necessarily the leeway, the flexibility to modify that language. Then we're going to have to use the statutory language. In those areas where we can kind of go around it, then we will try to do that.
Yeah, no, totally understood.
Okay. Now, are there any additional questions, edits, or comments related to the definitions that are in 9610?
Hey, this is Francesca with Tesla.
Sure.
I just wanted to respond to that comment around alignment with NEVI. I think there might be some opportunity there, but always just caution, right, that NEVI is intended in the context of a funding program. So I don't necessarily think that the federal minimum standards are always broadly applicable in a non-context of a funding program. So I always throw caution on that. And I know that when this went through the legislature, some of these definitions were heatedly debated. So just providing that context in terms of what's in the statute. I did have one clarifying question, which is on the definition, and I think this came up in the work groups as well, but on the definition of electric vehicle supply equipment and then electric vehicle supply provider, this language around, that is available and accessible to the public. The way I'm reading that is that if you're a private access location, like a workplace or multifamily that doesn't have, the general public can't access us, but you're providing charging services, that you would not come under these regulations. And so I just wanted to double check that it's accurate. And if that is the case, that might be something that could be more clearly defined. Because, if you're just reading this out of context, you may not have that same takeaway.
Well, again, we are limited by what is in SB 1001. And the definition for EVSE and for provider comes straight from that statute. So we're limited on what we can do with that particular definition. Now, of course, SB 1001 also has the exemptions noted, and I think that the exemptions are basically what you had just noted. So the chapter is not necessarily going to apply to those situations that are also a part of the exemptions statute. So, you know, these rules are not going to be, you know, in a vacuum. You're going to have to operate both within the rules and the statutory chapter 2311. That's the way we do all of our rules. You know, the rules just do not exist by themselves. The rules are intended to augment the statute. So, you know, any licensee, any registrant is expected to follow both the statutes and the rules. So I hope that kind of answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, that helps. I know it's just an issue that's come up in implementation of weights and measures regulation in other states, and so the more clarity you have, the better. But I certainly understand you have some statutory limitations in the way this is worded. Yeah,
and I also understand. I mean, the code says, the statute says that, you know, we are adopting by reference NIST regulations. You know, so there may be some room in there, and this is something that I think we may have to discuss both you know, internally with the department, and possibly, you know, when maybe we have to discuss possibly with the compliance subcommittee. But we just have to be very careful as to not run afoul of the statutory language that the legislature has passed. Okay. Somebody else had a question or comment?
Hey, Mark, this is Justin from ChargePoint. So are you saying that each of these definitions is lifted directly from the statute, or were some developed as part of our project?
Yeah, some of them are from the statute, and there are some that have been developed either through our staff's conversations with the various committees, or just developed internally with the BIT implementation team. We have broad rulemaking authority both under Chapter 51 of the Occupations Code and under 2311 of the Occupations Code for this program. So when we do rulemakings, we are allowed to take some license with some statutes if the statute is not totally clear in what it wants, or the legislature just comes flat out and just simply says the commission may adopt rules or shall adopt rules related to a certain subject. So, and that's what we commonly do. But when we have a statutory definition that is very clear on its face, then we don't deviate from that.
Okay, that's great. I would just say that I think there's two definitions that seem very, very similar to me. And if there's a consolidation that's possible, that is charging units and the electric vehicle supply equipment. I think oftentimes, at least from an industry perspective, are interchangeable. And, you know, certainly, you know, willing to listen to reasons why there should be two different definitions. But if we can consolidate those two into one, I think that would lead to cleaner interpretation of the rules.
Okay. And the BIT team, as well as myself, are taking notes on what the work group members are saying, as you can see on the screen. And so if I happen to be looking away or looking around on camera, it's because I'm writing down things, or I'm referencing the statute, you know, while we're talking. So I'm definitely listening though. Okay. All righty.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
Anything else on 9610?
This is Lindsay Stiegel
Yes.
at EVgo.
Mm-hmm.
So building off of what Justin was saying about charging unit definition, I agree that that may be able to be combined with EVSE. I also wanted to make sure it captured power sharing devices that might have 2 connectors. So it wasn't clear from charging unit. It just mentions 1 connector. So I just wanted to make you aware that some charging units have 2 connectors and plugs.
Mm-hmm.
And then I may have some follow-up questions later on how fees are applied, charging units or connectors. So we can save that for a later section.
This is
And I did read I did read EVgo's comments they sent in, and we did note that. Okay, Mr. Johnson.
yeah. So you got legacy charger, charging unit, and EVSE. It's the same line of what these other comments were, but we probably should have legacy charger match the EVSE rather than say charger. One of the problems we typically have is everybody's using different terms for the actual equipment. Some people are calling it a port, some are calling it charger, some call it EVSE, and that could be confusing because a charger could have two ports on it.
Okay, what did you suggest on that?
So we need to just have one term for the equipment. If we want to call it an EVSE, want to call it a unit, call it a charger. We use all 3 of those right now in the definitions.
Mm-hmm.
We should have one term for the actual charging equipment.
I think that when we were working on this, when staff was working on this, the statutory language, especially when you get to the registration area, it talks about a charging unit, registering a charging unit of EVSE. Now that, based on what you all are saying, that might have been maybe a misnomer on the part of the legislature in that statutory language in 2311-0302. And it is something that I think that we've had discussions about as how we're gonna term this. So I think that's probably something that we'll probably go back. The bid team will go back and take a look at that. And any members of the bid team that are currently online right now, feel free to provide any kind of comment or clarification that you wish if I'm not hitting something. Okay. All right. Anything else on 9610?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Brian Moran. I think what you're hearing from the colleagues is to make the regulations more user-friendly, it would be important to repeat the statutory definitions in one section, have a section about exemptions, so it's clear for any user that picks up these rules on how to comply, and that they'll readily be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it also fosters your case where the agency just can't change what was done legislatively. And I think it's that transparency that's missing here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All righty. So, one of my colleagues has just noted that, and I don't normally do this, but from time to time it comes in handy, but we generally don't try to imitate statutory language unless there's a situation where it needs to be. And when these rules were being done, you will notice that there are sections of these rules that do imitate statutory language from SB 1001. You'll see it, and it's been included, for reasons. But again, these rules are intended to be read in combination with the statutory requirements. They don't exist all by themselves. They exist side by side. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments or possible edits to 96.10? Okay, that's good. Okay, then moving on, and I'm sure there's going to be questions and comments on this because I know we did get some comments from EVgo on this. So 96.14, this is a section that was basically taken from section 4 of SB 1011 on the deadlines. And we did have some, when we were drafting this and we were crafting the language, we did have some a little bit of difficulty to try to make this as clear as we possibly could. And I certainly understand if there may still be a little bit of confusion. So, let's dig into this. And if you've got any comments or possible edits, let's go for it. Okay.
Okay, this is Lindsay Stiegel at EVgo. I can explain what my comment was. We were just confused about what's in B and then what's in B1, since one says any charging unit installed after December 1st, 2024, and then the next one says installed before, if it's I'm sorry, now I'm confusing myself. There were two conflicting sections here.
Oh, I see where you're coming from. Because it says after December 1st of 2024, and then you're looking at the or was installed before the effective date of the bill.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. It looks like we might have to clarify that a little bit. Because I think what we were trying to do, the legacy chargers have a kind of a specific sort of pseudo definition in 2311.0207, where it gives us the option to adopt rules to regulate those chargers in operation before January 21st that don't have a metering system to measure the electricity, or they're not capable of measuring time. And I don't know how many of those might be out there, but we were trying to sort of factor that in because of the unique sort of area in which legacy chargers operate. And I do believe, and I don't know if it was Tesla or not, but when we had the compliance subcommittee meeting, there was some discussion, I think, regarding legacy chargers, because I know I asked about them. And, how much time would these older chargers have to become current with, and in order to be in line with our regulations. And so we had 2028 here, and I think that's in line with some of the NIST requirements. So we can go back and kind of work on that last sentence. I don't know whether or not it can be, whether or not we'll just pull it away or add something different, but that is something that you're right. I think we need to clarify that. Anyone else have any comments on B and B1?
This is George Johnson. The only comment I have is, I install these units. We still don't have a way to test the DC chargers. To actually certify. And that equipment's coming. Like Fluke is working on a piece of equipment to do it as well. We just don't, similar to what Walmart had commented, we just want to make sure that the requirement isn't before actual test equipment is available.
What is your estimate on when the testing equipment would be available? Because if we're talking about B1, we're talking about 4 years down the pike.
Yeah, I think in the next couple of years we'll have, hopefully the next year. We thought we were going to have it this last year, but it's definitely going to be here in the next 4 years. But the DC chargers, we just don't have a way. It was a problem we were having in California as well. We just don't have a way to test the units yet.
And that was certainly an issue that came up with the bid team quite a bit. We had a lot of debates about that. based on what we heard from the compliance committee when we had the meeting back, I believe, in February. So, the 2028 date was there, kind of
That's
taking
for a
that into
legacy
account.
charger, right?
Yeah.
That's for a legacy charger. The way I read this, anything I install now has to be compliant.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah, that was going to be a question I have as well, which is like not so much about the legacy, but more of the existing. And like on the testing side, there is test equipment, but it's very expensive. It's not available at scale. To get your hands on it can be difficult. And then the way the field testing is being done is actually actively in consideration in front of the National Conference of Weights and Measures to be modified to simplify field testing because of the length of time and the type of testing you have to do. So there's also ongoing discussion on that. So it's not just, as simple as saying like the actual test equipment being available, yes, no. It's the scalability and the cost of that equipment, getting it out to everyone, and then actually being able to do the tests as prescribed currently is not necessarily feasible in the field without having access to an electric vehicle. The load that you have to emulate has to be huge, and so you have to develop these giant load emulator boxes. You have to figure out how to get those into the field. It's very different from the AC side, level 2 charging for DC and testing.
Yeah, I guess, and that's accurate. I guess that's what I meant is the test equipment is not commercially available or easy to get. It is super expensive, not UL listed, hard to get, hard to move, kind of stuff.
And I think that's one of the reasons why the rules don't really address the testing equipment side right now because of that very issue. Ford, did you have a comment?
Yeah. Michael Strawn, manager for our compliance division. Apologize, my voice is going out today. Francesca, you bring up a really good point. It's something that our BIT team, our bill implementation team, has been looking at. You're right, the scalability, the availability of that equipment to do widespread testing, the cost that's there. These are all things, and as Mark was leading into, why we have not been explicit on those requirements within this rule set, because we know that is still advancing and that's still going. Even in our research that we've done, we've seen that the limited equipment that could potentially be used at this point in time doesn't even necessarily work within a lot of the confines of Texas weather. There's limitations on temperature, humidity, things like that it can be used within, and we're well aware that is an area of this that is still left for discussion, and that's why we tried not to be so prescriptive and exactly the testing equipment, methods, and everything at this point in time.
Yeah, another thing too that came up during the BIT discussions was whether or not testing companies would ultimately be the registered or licensed, and that's something that you don't see in this set of rules. Probably for the same reason that has been mentioned by the work group members, as well as what Ford just said. So when we get to the inspection section, you'll see that the inspection section is more in line with the documentation that's associated with installation and inspection, that kind of stuff, rather than us focusing in on whether or not the register or licensed testing companies. That may or may not come down the pike, don't know, but it's certainly not in these rules right now. And as I said, there have been conversations, but certainly it's not a part of this rule package, and I'd be very surprised if it became part of it. But your points on the testing equipment challenges are well taken. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Hey, Mike, this is Justin with ChargePoint. One comment and one question. So I agree with all my colleagues that I think we need a little bit more specificity on what is expected from the implementers related to ensuring the device accuracy, right? So if just relying on NTAP certificates is adequate, or if field testing equipment being utilized is necessary, what is needed for each one of these compliance timeframes would be really helpful. That could be a guidance document potentially, or it could be in the rules. If it were a guidance document, I would want to see that being developed in on the same timeline as these rules. So that's the comment. The question I have is, I'm curious if you could just kind of walk me through item C in this section and what exactly we're exempting and why.
Okay, let's see. Second here. Okay. You said C?
Correct.
Okay. And that's language, statutory language that was taken from the bill. Okay, so yeah, it's statutory language that was kind of lifted from 23110303. D is in David. So again, what was your question?
Well, I guess I'm just trying to understand the universe of the chargers that we're exempting because of item C here. So it seems to be a pretty big universe, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's see, that particular provision is going to deal with the charging units installed after December 1st, and for which you're using public money to install those units. So they're not going to be required to follow 2303D, 23110303D until 2030. So, and that looks like that's dealing with the standard charge connector or plug. Those are particular ones.
So are we saying that everything that has a standard plug does not have to comply with the rules until January 1st, 2030? I'm just trying to understand the practical application here.
I think that may be limited to the charger connector or plug. Ford, do you have any comment on that?
Not any further than you have at this time, but we may need to talk more on it.
The previous subsections in 0303, those are expected to apply to the charging units installed. Certainly the ones once we get started on this thing after December 1st, but D appears to deal with only that universe of equipment that's installed after December 1st, and they've received federal or they'll receive some kind of public funding for it. And we may need to flesh this one out a little bit more, apparently.
Yeah, I'd encourage fleshing it out a little bit more and trying to understand maybe a non-rural language speak what the impact of that is, because I'm just a little lost on who is actually impacted by it. And maybe it's a lack of definition on publicly funded, but that would be helpful.
I mean, I would be thinking that those providers that receive some kind of funding, probably just an example, federal funding, the NEVI standards are going to have certain requirements that we don't have.
Yeah, I mean, 2311-0303D is the subsection applies only to electric vehicle supply equipment installed after December 1st, 2024, that is made available to the public and is not intended primarily for private use and is funded by public grant or rebate program. And that says the commission, in consultation with Texas Department of Transportation, shall adopt standards that require EVSE to be equipped with standard electrical vehicle charging connection or plug type that is widely compatible. And that's what 2311-303D is referring to.
It may come down to that I may have to put that exact language in there. I was trying to kind of shorten it up a little bit. But if it's causing a problem, then I will adopt that language in 2311-0303D. Is there any problem in understanding what 2311-0303D means? If not, then I'll plug that language right into that section. Because I'm assuming that they're talking about the NACS plug, unless something's changed.
Well, I mean, so you don't use that terminology in these rules, the NACS plug, right? We haven't gotten to section D yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, going back to a previous comment, who's going to pick up these rules and determine how they have to comply? Somebody, the facts of this industry are you can, in particular for level 2 stations, you can order this stuff off the internet. You can have it delivered. You can have a local electrician install it. And I think we just need to be really explicit on what we're intending to mean. Section D here below does not say NAC. And so if that's what the commission means, they should say that. If that's not what they mean and it's open for interpretation, that's fine. But uncertainty is an enemy of us getting to the solution that we need to deploy these stations. So I would encourage being as explicit as possible.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. I mean, do you anticipate providers doing level 2 chargers? I mean, those are generally pretty slow. I was wondering, if most of these providers would be doing the fast chargers.
Looks like Ms. Cosarelli.
Yeah,
Question.
the Department of Energy expects that 80% of charging is going to be level 2. So a lot of that is going to take place at the home, but it's going to take place at workplace, at retail locations. An assumption that level 2 or that DC fast charging is replacing level 2 is incorrect.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I agree.
According to the rules, we're not regulating chargers that are in the home. They're exempt.
No, but there's going to be level 2 in workplace charging, certain retail charging. There's still going to be level 2s installed. They're not obsolete by any means.
Yeah, but as long as they're not, it's not a commercial charger, they're going to be exempt. If they're not charging money for people to plug into that location, it's not going to be subject to this chapter.
Oh, but I think I think they actually will charge money. I think that there'll be public access chargers. We already have them. You know, we're already using level 2 for that. No, I think level 2 is very relevant. It's not for every application, just like DC is not for every application, but it's definitely relevant.
Well, if that's the case, then and somebody wants to use a level 2 charger for that purpose, then these rules are going to cover them then, because they're not going to be subject to the 2311, 02, 06 exemptions. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think so. This is Justin from ChargePoint again. I am reading these rules as applying to both DC and level 2 charging. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is I think being more explicit is better. So in section C, if you need to take the language, you know, from the statute, put it in there to be more explicit, I'm happy to look at a version of that. Or in section D, you seem to indicate that means max. I don't see max listed in section D. And so if that's what you mean, I would be interested in seeing that. If that's not what you mean, then we need to have a discussion about that. But being explicit for somebody who has to comply with these rules is very important. Okay, I don't have a problem with that. But that's my challenge with D. Is my note here is who determines this and how, because it is essentially left open to interpretation. Okay. Okay.
Hi.
So basically, you would want us to include some language related to level 2 chargers in here. Is that what I'm getting? In the instance you feel like level 2 chargers should be treated differently, it should be explicitly called out. Well, I mean, I don't think that level 2 chargers should be treated differently as long as they're not subject to the exemptions in 0206 of the code. So if we want to include level 2 chargers in there, we can do that. Again, the way that these rules are set up, it's set up to read both the code and the rules in tandem. However, if it's going to cause some questions in the industry, then we can go back and make some modifications to try to clarify. Okay, there was another question out there?
Yes, Ms. Cosdarelli has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. This is Denise Cosdarelli. I was just reading that. The way I read that line is that it would be basically given to funded by the government and then given to like maybe a housing development that does not have the funds to buy one, and then it's subsidized by the government funding or something like that. That's how I was reading that one, funded by a public grant or rebate program. That's how I read it. I don't know if that's what was intended, but that's what I was reading that one as.
Okay, I don't know if the BIT team read it that way, but I think we were kind of looking at the federal monies that Texas has been allocated, which I think is about $500 million. So any provider that kind of dipped into that, of course, the NEVI standards are going to kick in with regard to that. But I don't think that we read it from that particular standpoint. But
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's just my thought.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. But it looks like C, we probably will go to the language in 303D to try to clarify that, and it looks like we also need to maybe be a little bit more clear on the level 2 chargers. So we'll go back and take a look at that. Okay. We have another person has a question up, a hand up.
That is me, Jamie Mitchell with Austin Energy. And I don't see anywhere, and I don't remember in the legislation, but in the code where it mentions any difference between level 2 or fast chargers or even level 1, which is a general plug, but that's not what we're talking about. That's just a comment. And then I had a just clarifying question, and I apologize to slow things down. It does say on that would be B1 on 9614 that if it's installed before 2023, the effective date of the bill, you have until March 28th to comply with registration and all the other things listed in this rules. Is that correct? Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, I believe so. I think that was the intent.
Because it's got or. It's a legacy charger or was installed. So I read that or to include.
I think that was the intent when we did that. Simply because these may have been older chargers that needed to be brought up to the standards.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, now we have another hand up.
Yeah, sorry, just a quick question. On C and D, is D intended to apply to everything right now? Or does it tie back to the dates and the timing right above it?
Well, it does say unless exempted by the code or this chapter. So the exemptions in the chapter pretty much track those in the code. So those standard plugs or connectors wouldn't be necessary if they were exempted by the code or the chapter.
Right, but this is where I think the two bills had conflicting language because the 2030 date was very intentionally put in so that you weren't choosing an arbitrary connector today necessarily because you can't predict every use case. I think there's maybe even a question about medium heavy duty vehicles. So again, I think it just merits maybe more consideration of how explicit you are in that and how this language gets applied.
Well, if we adopt the language from 0303D of the code, then D is going to go away.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if we take that exact language, it's included. So we would just be basically combining C and D. So that's kind of where we're at. And the previous comment where they were talking about whether or not the bill addressed level 2 chargers, I didn't see anything in either bill that talked about level 2 chargers. I mean, we are pretty much, I think, just dealing with chargers that are part of a commercial transaction. So they could be level 2 chargers. They could be the DC fast chargers. I don't think the legislature certainly made any distinction between the two. It's just a charging unit that's subject to a commercial transaction on a digital network. So, but I kind of figured that there would be. Sure.
Well, Mark, I mean, I just wanted to put a fine point on it. So this is Justin from ChargePoint. There are tens of thousands of level 2 charging units, probably in the state of Texas, but multiple tens of thousands across the United States that are level 2 charging units that charge a fee. So I just want to make sure that as you're drafting the rules, you have a concept of that. I think there's this idea that's been articulated that level 2 chargers don't charge fees. That's not necessarily the case. There are, I definitely know, multiple thousands within the state of Texas that are level 2 chargers that charge a fee.
Oh no, I think the bid team was pretty much aware of that. It's just that, I mean, I have a level 2 charger in my garage. Okay. And somebody had mentioned that there's about 80% of the chargers out there are level 2 chargers. I'm just kind of curious as to, of that percentage, how many are private chargers, or how many of those level 2 chargers are supplied to shoppers, employees of companies, and of those, how many don't charge a fee? I'm curious about the percentage, because those chargers are going to be exempt.
Yeah, this is Justin from ChargePort. I'll work on getting you a number, at least internally, from our network, but I can tell you it's multiple thousands in the state of Texas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I would be really curious, certainly between, the private chargers that people own versus, those ones that, the code clearly notes are exempt. I would be very curious. And then from that number, we can determine how many level chargers in Texas are actually subject to this, to the code and to this rule chapter. Okay. But I kind of figured that there was going to be a lot of discussion on 96.14. So I'm not totally surprised that there are some questions on it, because we had a lot of questions. So that's the purpose of why we're having this work group, and and certainly appreciate it. So if there are no more questions on 96.14.
No, I do. Brian Moran.
Oh, okay.
I think in 96.14D, I think, I know this is contradictory to what the statutory language is, but in essence, what we're doing is we're ostracizing or eliminating charging capabilities for older electric vehicles, because you're mandating it. It's somewhat of a moving target, but if you define it as the plug type has to be widely compatible, that's a concern. And, I think what I would suggest is a thought of let the market drive this, not regulation.
Well, that's statutory language, though. And I do think
I know.
Yeah. But I do think that the legislature was contemplating that the market's going to drive that, which is why it uses the generalized term widely compatible.
Well, Michael Strawn, Manager Compliance Division. So it is also explicitly referring to those EVSEs that are developed utilizing these funds and not across the board. So it's to establish, if you're using publicly granted funds, that the standard that's created from TDLR and Texas Department of Transportation at that point in time, that if you were developing and implementing EVSEs using those funding, that they would follow that that connector type, not every single privately funded or operated EV charger or legacy charger must come into compliance with that standard at that point in time. That's how I read that.
How would you demonstrate compliance with this standard?
When the standard is set, then whenever it's likely something that's tied into that actual grant funding at that point in time, that you would agree that your grant funding would be to implement an EVSE at a specific location, utilizing and meeting all of that criteria.
I'm also wondering whether or not the NEVI standards would cover that. Yeah, just a thought. Because those standards are, may in some instances be more stringent than what we have.
Yeah,
if you're taking federal money.
Each state could dictate what plug standard is part of their NEVI applications.
Mm-hmm.
But, how would you measure what plug is widely used? How would you define that? How would you even say, well, that should have been an ACS charger, not China Mayo? How would you know? I'm just not seeing the real import of the criteria, I guess, of D altogether.
Well, that may be something that we may have to revisit in our discussions. I was thinking that there was going to be a national standard plug. At least that's what I've been led to believe. Now, has that recently changed? Does anyone know that?
I don't think we're debating that there couldn't be a standard like plug, but I think it's subjective in how you define that today, especially if you look at some of the dates. Like going forward, NACS might be the standard, and the past CCS might have been the standard, right? Like and then you might have medium and heavy duty vehicles that might use MCS. So there's like a lot of nuance there that is being missed in this regulatory text to some extent.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, with regard to this particular section, if you all have any kind of draft language that you'd like to see replaced in here, feel free to submit it to the BIT team, and we'll take a long, hard look at it, because we certainly want to make this as easy as possible for everyone to understand. We don't want to have any confusion. We kind of anticipated, as I said, that this section might have a little bit of confusion. It was a little confusing in the bill itself when we got to Section 4. So it's not a surprise that, when we adopted that language in here in our draft, that there would be questions. So let's, if y'all have some draft language you'd like to submit to us, please do. Absolutely. Okay. Any other questions or comments before we move on? Okay, hearing none, we will move to subchapter B. Okay, and this is dealing with the registration requirements. 96.20, it's a pretty standard language that we use in our programs. And basically, unless it's exempted by law, the set of rules, you have to register the charging unit with the department before you start using it for commercial transactions. Now, we did have some comments with regard to the term charging unit, whether we're talking charging unit or EVSE. Again, that's something we'll certainly look into. But any questions, comments, or possible edits to this particular section? Hearing none, I'm going to move on.
Oh, sorry, this is Lindsay at EVgo.
Okay.
Yeah, I think as you go back, just making it clear if the registration is per connector, like if each connector would have a different registration number, or if it's the unit that may have two connectors that would have a single registration number.
Well, I think the way that we were contemplating it is that the unit has two connectors, you would just be registering the unit.
Okay,
so,
I think what confuses me is when we get into the fee section where the fee is per connector.
Yeah, the fee may be per connector, but the registration number would flow with the unit itself.
Yeah, but wouldn't we have to certify each connector to make sure each one was dispensing accurately? Seems like each port, each connector should have its own individual certification.
Yeah, you're talking about a registration number for each port or each connector?
Because
that's not what we contemplated. We contemplated doing a registration number for just the unit itself.
It's for the EVS, the dispenser.
Yeah,
dispenser.
It might have two
quarts, 3 quarts, 4 quarts.
Yeah, it might have more than one plug or connector, but the unit itself is what we're registering.
Okay, so we just need to make it clear that the dispenser, regardless of the number of ports, the dispenser has a single registration.
Yeah, and we may be getting, kind of hung up with the nomenclature here. We are using the statutory language that's in the bill, the charging unit. We're not using dispenser or anything of that nature. We're using charging unit, connector, plug. That's Those are the terms we're using.
And it might be that in backup and definitions,
Yeah.
you know, charging unit is defined as an EVSE, a dispenser, whatever, you know, charger, something like that.
Let's go back up here real quick. Okay. We'll have to see whether or not we're going to be using that term dispenser, but we'll definitely. I'm going to make a note. I'm going to make a note on that. You know. Yeah.
Nomenclature's been screwing us up for years in this industry because it's so new.
Yeah, well, we don't want to do that, but at the same time, again, and I hate to beat a dead horse, but we have got to stick very, very close to what the legislature wants us to do. Okay. All right. But the charging unit, we may have some wiggle room.
Sorry to push us back up to definitions.
No, that's okay. It just to be clear, it's the charging unit that's being registered. That's what's in the bill. Now, whether that charging unit has 2, 3, 4, 20 plugs on it, the charging unit.
Then that's how we need to define it, so that when we read that definition, we know.
And that may be is something as simple as what E.B. Gill had mentioned, you know, adding a plural to charging connector or plugs, you know. So this could be something like, you know, that. Oh, that's not working. Okay, it's not letting me do that. I don't know why. Okay, maybe that's why. No, not letting me do it. Okay, I'll just have to make that change later. Okay. What is going on here? I'm having some technical difficulties, but I'll try and do it this way for now. Okay, can everybody still see this?
Yeah, I got a little smaller, Mark.
Okay, here we go. Okay. And I'm not entirely sure why when I try to move, it's making this stuff bigger. Okay. So I'll have to use the thing on the side. Okay. Okay, so 96.20. Any other questions or comments on that before we move on? Okay, moving on to 21. This basically is just the requirements. So you're going to register your charging unit at a new location. You know, you will have to get an application from the department, and then there'll be a statement on that application for the provider to affirm that the unit's been installed or inspected by a licensed electrician, and that the installation was performed in conformance with a manufacturer's specs, and that the unit was working properly at the time of an inspection or installation. Okay, that will be included on the application, you know, and the provider would just simply sign that. Okay, and most likely it'd probably be at the very bottom, you know, when you sign and state that everything that's included in the application is true and correct. Well, and then of course there's the fees that we'll get to in 9680. You have to include that as well for the charging units that you want to put online at a particular location. Registration's 1 year. If you change ownership, if the provider changes ownership, then it's a new application for registration. And you have to report any changes to the provider name, contact information, et cetera, as you see down there within 30 days of the change. So having reviewed this, are there any questions, edits, or comments related to this particular section?
Yes.
Okay.
Brian Rand. Sorry if I didn't see any hands. I'm just on the phone here.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things I know we discussed in our work group meetings was the renewal timeframe, and I thought we were considering, a 2-year timeframe. I think I know we would appreciate that as less paperwork.
Yeah, and that was certainly a discussion.
Any other?
Yeah, and that was certainly a discussion that we had within the bid team, and we were going to go with a 2-year registration, but we do have to fund the program. Under 2311-0202, we have to collect fees in amounts that are sufficient to cover the administration of the program. And once we did an internal review of the fees, it was because of the way that it's set up in the bill, where basically the registration has to start on March 1st of 2025, I believe. It's in the middle of a fiscal year, and it wreaks havoc with the department's financial structure. So to do a 2-year registration, we would have had some real imbalance every other year in the amount of money that would be taken in on fees. So it was determined that to do a 1-year registration would be better for us able to comply with the statute to administer the program. And it's my understanding that this is going to be temporary, but it may be a 1-year registration for a period of a few years, and then eventually it'll go to a 2-year registration. Yeah. Is there anybody from the bid team? Is Tony here, or Laura? Okay, probably not.
Sorry, I'm Laura Hernandez, licensing manager. Yeah, that was a discussion that we will eventually go to, hopefully move toward a 2-year licensure once the program gets started and the fees are collected, and then we can assess how that balance will work so that it works with our fiscal years.
Any other questions along that line? Because usually in our programs, registrations are a 2-year duration, but the legislature kind of made it a little difficult for us by requiring the registration to start on March 1st of 2025, right in the middle of the fiscal year. And as I said, it kind of wreaks havoc with the way that we can actually administer the program. So after a lot of discussion, we ended up going to a 1-year registration. But again, it is temporary. I can't say for sure how long it's going to be, but yeah, it is a temporary situation, and we will make a rule change when it's ready to be done, and we will go to a 2-year registration. Okay. Any other questions, comments, or edits on 21? Okay, hearing none, then we're going to move on to 22. And this is dealing with the renewals. So if you're renewing a registration of an existing unit, you'll get a renewal application, and you'll provide the fee, which I believe is $25 per plug or connector for that. Okay. And basically, the way we're going to have it, we plan on having it set up. Each provider would have his or her own account in Versa, and you'd have a username and password, and you would go in there, and you would do your renewal process there, pay your fees. Or if you had new units, you would go in there and you'd be instructed as to how to go about doing all this stuff online and pay your fees. So all of this is going to be pretty much digital for y'all to make it very easy for you to add units at an existing location or remove units at an existing location and then pay accordingly. Okay, and that's what 96.22 covers. Any questions, edits, comments? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to move on. Y'all keep this up, okay? 23 is registration changes. So if the number of charging units increase at an existing location, then the provider will submit a notice that the department will generate that you'll fill out to let us know. And if you're adding new units, of course, we're going to want the provider to affirm the integrity of those new units that are installed, you know, that a licensed electrician, same thing that we had earlier in the initial registration process. The licensed electrician will basically, who installed the unit or inspected the unit, states that the installation was performed properly and that the unit was working in proper working order at the time of installation and inspection, and then of course the fee. So, and if you either remove or retire a charging unit at a location, just let us know. Okay. Any questions or comments related to this section? All right, moving on to Certificate of Registration 24. Just simply that if a member of the public requests a copy of the registration certificate, you can supply it either you can refer the requester to your digital network and they can find it there, or you can provide a copy to the requester at their email address or physical address if they don't have an electronic mail. Then there's a requirement about the registration number being included on the receipt following the completion of a commercial transaction. I know EVgo had a question about this or a comment, and you know, if EVgo, if you want to talk about that, that'd be fine.
Sure, thank you. This is Lindsay at EVgo. We recommended not requiring this to be on the receipt. It kind of goes beyond what was in the law, and I understand why it's on the receipt. So I was trying to come up with other solutions, but changing our receipts or making them specific to different chargers in different states is really time consuming and burdensome for us. So we're just hoping to minimize the amount of new and special information that goes on these receipts. So one solution I had would be adding the registration number to the sticker that's already going on there. I know some of my colleagues might not like stickers as much, but that would be less burdensome for us at least.
Okay, any other comments or questions related to that section? And again, I apologize, but for some reason I'm having some problems trying to access this portion of the document.
While you try to access it, I would just echo Lindsay's comment on the inclusion of the registration number and you know, creating unique fields on invoices being challenging. So if there is another mechanism to achieve the same goal with, then we would be supportive of that. We're not generally fans of stickers because we don't like to have tons of stickers on our charging stations. But if there's another digital way to kind of incorporate this, we would want to look into that.
Yeah, I also agree with that. trying to put it on the receipt is going to be problematic.
Is there an alternative place besides a sticker that it could be, you all could possibly propose, that we could still use electronically?
Well, we are allowing for the well, no, that's on the certificate of registration number. Let's see here. So is that a programming issue? That the registration number would cause problems?
It can be, yes. Because the receipt is from the handbook 44, and that's where it comes from. That dictates exactly what should be on it. Because the charging unit has a distinct number that's required to be on there, so maybe tie it to that somehow.
Right. I mean, I have noticed that each charging unit has however many digits it is, and then they might have a dash and another number, which I'm assuming might be the number of the charger itself at that particular location. So, like I go to Electrify America, they've got maybe about a 6-digit number for the charger and then a dash, which would be like 1 through 10. And that might be charger number 4, so it'd be -4. So, I mean, it's certainly something that we can try to discuss and figure out on that.
Yeah, Markel Strawn, compliance. I definitely think it's something we can look at if all of our partners here are expressing concern with it. Certainly, we have standards already we can rely on. And I think we can take this to our internal bit team and discuss what the intent was. This may precede when I came onto this bit team, what we're trying to accomplish by having that registration number on that receipt during that, after that transaction. So we can certainly talk about it.
Well, I think the registration number was kind of there for enforcement purposes. So, because if we do get a complaint on a charging unit, the receipt is what the complainant is going to work off of, and what they're going to be asked to provide enforcement.
Understood.
So, that registration number is kind of key, to the whole situation. Now, the enforcement may be able to determine the registration number based on the information that's on the receipt, like the name of the company, that they may be able to do it that way. But for our purposes internally, if we have the registration number, it makes it a lot easier for us to use that number as a reference and go straight to the provider that may be subject to an enforcement action. And that's why, we put that there. Now, so I can't promise that, the version that we ultimately give to for publication, or that the ultimate version that the commission actually approves would not have that provision in there, but just I'd like the work group to know that there is a reason behind it, and it is for enforcement purposes.
Somebody else.
Ford, you still have your hand up?
Now I can lower it.
Any
Excuse
other?
me.
Sure.
Thank you. Jamie Mitchell with Austin Energy. And my team tells me that every charging station has its own EVSE unique number already. And I'm sort of asking the other providers out there, if that would be something that went on the receipt, since it's already there, and then you could cross-reference that in your in your enforcement. I mean, ideally, it'd be that we just use that number as your registration number. That probably doesn't work with your computer systems and stuff and numbering. But It's just an idea. I'm not the expert. That's just what I've been told by my team. That might
Yeah.
just an
Well,
idea.
it's required by the handbook that each one has its own number that's unique to it. And
Yeah.
so if we can somehow relate the registration to those numbers, that might be a compromise.
And we'll discuss it internally with our Versa individual and see if that can be done that way. You know, we'll just kind of have to see, you know, but you know, again, it's something that our enforcement people kind of really want it, because that receipt is key to any kind of enforcement action. I mean, it'll be used as a piece of evidence. So, you know, we'll look into that, and we'll kind of see what we can do. Okay. Any other questions on 24? Okay, moving on. We're at the exemption section. These exemptions, now, while it does not show all the exemptions that are noted in the statute itself, some of those exemptions deal with internal department issues, so they were not included in this rule portion. Only those that are public facing. So, you know, obviously, you know, the chapter doesn't apply to private chargers for non-commercial use, and those are generally going to be the level 2s or those level 1s, which, you know, are crazy to use anyway. But and then of course, you know, if it's for you know apartment complexes, office developments, you know, things of that nature, or provided by a business for use at no charge. So this rule chapter and the code would not apply to those type of situations. Any questions, comments, or edits on that particular section?
Hello, survivors.
Okay, hearing none, moving on.
I'm sorry, I'm always a little bit late. Sorry, Mark.
That's okay.
It's Lindsay at EVgo. My only comment was on number 2, because the way I read it, a group of individuals, including certain listed things, but I thought perhaps it should be including but not limited to, because I didn't see fleets noted in there.
Yeah, and I did note that in your comments, and because my computer seems to be acting weird, I can't, for some reason, you know, come up with this thing. So what I might have to do is stop sharing and then reshare again, or what I may end up having to do is have Anna start sharing. But we'll try this for now and we'll see. But in response to your question, that's statutory. That language is pulled straight from the statute. So there might have been a reason as to why the legislature termed it that way, and didn't put in there not limited to. So that's my main concern. And we probably are not going to be able to change that particular section.
Okay.
All right. If there's nothing else, we're going to move to subchapter C. Okay, inspections and investigations. You know, this may be the aspect of regulation that some of y'all don't like, but it's something we have to do, something we've been charged to do by the legislature. 96.60 talks about EVSE inspections and investigations, and basically gives the department the authority to inspect and test non-exempt EVSE operating in any location in Texas, in accordance with the law, our general powers under Chapter 51, and our inspection and investigation rules under Chapter 60 for TDLR, and any other, you know, federal laws or regulations that we're allowed to do inspections and investigations under. So this is pretty much standard language that we include in pretty much all of our programs, just letting you know that, you know, at some point, we will be conducting inspections. And under Chapter 60, we are doing what's known as risk-based inspections. And the Field Inspections Division has already developed their process by which they will be doing field inspections. And I'm a little bit fuzzy on their process. Do we have anybody here from Field Inspections right now? Apparently not. But as I said, we're doing risk-based inspections, and basically what those are is the more violations that a provider may rack up, the more frequently they would be subject to inspection. Now, right now, we're not doing the types of inspections that you'd expect a third-party testing company to do. One, for the reasons that we've just laid out, the technology is not fully developed, and certainly there's cost aspects associated with it. However, we can do inspections that are related to the documents related to inspections, installations, things of that nature, and we'll get to that section in a few minutes. So that's what this section covers. I don't think there'll be really any changes associated with this section. As I said, this is pretty much standard language that we use in all of our programs. So are there any questions or comments? Okay, then we'll move on to subchapter D. And once again, use the side thing. Okay, 96.70 is the responsibilities of the provider. The first one under A, the provider has to show a notice on the charging unit or their digital network that TDLR regulates electric supply equipment. That's taken straight from the statute. So that's something that you have the choice of doing. You either put it on your digital network or you can put it on the charging unit. Okay. Consumers and providers must be notified by the provider of the name, email address, website address, mailing address, telephone number of the department for the purpose of directing complaints to the department about any issues that they may have when they're doing a commercial transaction to charge their vehicle. Now, I do understand that EVgo, y'all on B1 had a question, and you were asking basically if on this notification has to appear on all of these documents. Some of these documents are related to the department, and they will be removed. And we'll take care of those internally. So the certificate of registration, we'll put that information on that. On the application, we'll put that information as well. I think for the providers themselves, it's probably going to be the charging unit and the post-charging session receipt. So we'll probably end up removing some of this language and maybe just saying the charging unit and the session receipt. Bit team guys, do you have any issues with that? Board?
Yeah, just in Prime Rand, just encouraging the department to minimize, the paperwork obligations here. Particularly if you're talking contracts with multiple providers, charging, it can get very complicated very quickly.
Those contracts for services, I think that was mainly dealing with the department's ability to contract with a third party to do testing. So I think that particular part is probably going to be may be subject to removal, as well as I said, the certificate of registration, the application, and possibly the inspection report. So EBSC, charging unit, and the receipt probably would remain. Board?
I didn't have any other comments for you, Mark. Sorry.
Okay. Does that make sense to you? Because it doesn't seem like we should even have that in the rule related to the providers, because we have the control over the registration certificate, the application, the inspection report, and the written contract for services if the department determines to use a third-party testing company, if that becomes available.
Mm-hmm. We go with it.
Okay. Then, also, we have the.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
On 1, 2, and 3, the way I'm reading this is that 2 and 3 are not substituted for each other. So why do you have to have a sticker on the device and on either the display or the mobile app or whatever your customer is using as a primary display? They also have to have the information. Isn't that redundant? Are you then requiring people to provide it in several different places?
I think that, and I think you're right on that. We probably do need to modify that. We may not necessarily have to put it on the visual display, but the sticker, I think, is something that we're going to probably want on the unit. I think we probably thought about the visual display and the unit kind of as belt and suspenders. So, if something happened to the sticker before y'all could replace it, it would be on the visual display.
Would there be any consideration for just having a digital option?
Well, we do give the option of putting it on the digital network. So, and number 2, if you don't want to put it on the visual display, you can put it on your network.
Yeah, but sorry, and instead of the sticker, I think as I mentioned earlier, like stickers are like, there is a concern about the amount of, there's not a ton of space to just throw. I mean, yeah, there's many reasons why we don't stick tons of stickers on our charging stations. And so if I'm a consumer, the way I interact with the network, at least for Tesla's network, is either through my phone or my vehicle. And so like I almost think you'd be better off because you'd be like a consumer could have more information in the digital format than having to like read a sticker that might fade over time and things like that. So yeah, I don't know what other networks think about that, but to me, it'd be an either or, depending on how your network tends to interface with a customer directly.
And if you all notice, I think there are some corollaries between FMQ and this program. From what I've determined from the bid team, I think the sticker is something that we are kind of tied to, but I don't want to say too much on that. But the sticker,
Mark, if I may
we talk about that.
So, Francesca, Michael Strawn, compliance. First of all, I hear what you're saying, and it's been something that a lot of thought has been given to. And I understand when you're stating that individuals typically will interact with their app, rather than, through a sticker or some other medium there. However, there are other areas where if we see vandalism within a unit, or a unit's malfunctioning and somebody is not even a EV user, that they would still be able to report something to us utilizing that sticker. That sticker has a lot of value for, and as you heard Mark talking to you, for our citizens across the state of Texas to be able to report different issues. In the FMQ world, motor fuels world, it could be anything from a skimmer to a device that's leaking, hazardous, or has been damaged. And so you may have an individual that does not have an EV charger or vehicle or app, and they would still need to be able to report in those instances. So that's why we typically see a lot of value in that sticker. I know that it's not always everybody's favorite to throw stickers onto devices. Typically we have these stickers out in the weather for very long periods of time, and they have not shown to fade quickly or wear quickly within that time. So there are other considerations there that I would bring to your attention. I do think that certainly when we're talking visual display or the digital network, that's absolutely something that we're comfortable with. But removing that sticker, I think that's going to have to be if that's something that's adamant, that we would really have to give further concern to, because that's a tool for all of our citizens, not just our EV users that are out there.
That's a good point. Yeah, as Ford was saying, and we'll certainly go back and talk about this, but the sticker has, is something that TDLR has been kind of out in front on in the FMQ program, and as I said, there's a lot of corollaries between these two programs. And that sticker is a very important informational device and a consumer-facing device. So, we'll just kind of have to see on that. I mean, we certainly can't make any promises related to that sticker, but we'll do what we can.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think fundamentally, like, there are a lot of crossovers between your existing program and charging stations, but we're also creating a very different user experience. So, just because it's been done for one program, I appreciate others might need to call in and maybe provide some information, complaints, whatever else. But we've also successfully deployed hundreds of chargers in Texas today, and we haven't run into this issue. So, I appreciate the consideration.
Absolutely. Of course, Tesla has been out there putting those chargers out there, but of course, we didn't have any bills passed, regulating until just now. So, okay. So the language that we're expecting to put in these notices, and is right there, in C, where a consumer, whether it's somebody who's an EV owner or just a member of the public, they can report any kind of complaint they have to the information there below, and that would be on the consumer information sticker. Okay. Any other questions, comments, or edits related to this particular section? Oops.
This is Lindsay at EVgo. I would just flag the same thing here applies with having this special information on the receipt. So if it's on the sticker and the app or whatever, I feel like that, that should cover it, and perhaps you could consider removing it from the receipt.
Okay. Yeah. Again, we'll have to kind of see on that, because as I said, the receipt is an important piece of evidence for anyone that decides to file a complaint of some nature, and one that enforcement is going. That's one of the first things they're going to ask for, and they're going to rely upon that quite a bit when they start their investigations. And they move forward with some type of enforcement action, so that receipt is going to be used by them, and it's going to be very important. But again, we'll certainly take that into account. Okay. Is there anybody who? Go ahead.
Yeah, Brian Moran. One suggestion, was mentioned where the value of the sticker is there to let someone know, hey, the console smashed. And I guess, seeing there's codified an ability 30 days to repair or to replace a sticker that may be faded or torn off or something like that, or damaged by vandalism. Shouldn't we include some sort of opportunity to cure any sort of what I would call vandalism related damage, as opposed to potentially leading right into an enforcement situation?
Well, since there's time for the provider to replace that sticker, you've got that 30-day window and to do it. So it's not like enforcement is going to jump on you 3 days after that sticker is faded.
Yeah, yeah, the scenario I was thinking is if your, telemetry doesn't tell you the console display is broken, and yet then you get a complaint, will that lead to enforcement, or do you give an opportunity, such as 30 days, to repair the equipment before any sort of enforcement proceeding begins? It's basically an opportunity, basically codify an opportunity to cure vandalism-related damage.
Well, I think when we get a little farther down, when we're talking about taking units offline, maybe we can discuss that when we get to that section. So let's put a pin in that for now. But is there anyone who needs to take a break for like about 10 minutes or so we can? We're almost done.
I was about to ask Mark how you're feeling and how the work group's feeling. You want to keep pushing, or do we need a break?
I'll leave it up to you folks. I have to jump off momentarily.
Then why don't we just keep going? If you're okay with that, Mark?
I'm fine with that. My only issue was trying to figure out what was going on with my screen, but that's okay. We can keep going because we're almost finished.
Okay, great.
Okay, all righty. Then let's go on to 96.71, the consumer information sticker. Okay, and basically what we're saying is that the provider has to obtain the consumer information sticker that has the information that's up there in 96.70C that we just discussed, and place that sticker, on the charging unit. Now, we have been made aware that this may present a bit of a problem for some of y'all. But again, this is something that's kind of important, and it seems to be at least I think something that we may have established with the FMQ program, kind of maybe not a trademark is the right word, but certainly a symbol that's important, I think, to not just EV consumers, but just as Ford said, consumers as a whole. In the event that there's a problem, they can contact us and let us know. So this is what 71 deals with. Now, we were talking about with Mr. Moran. Section C, I think, is what you're kind of referring to. If the sticker goes down, you've got 30 days after you discovered the condition to replace that sticker. Now, I don't know if that helps you, but the language that 30 days after the provider discovered the condition. Now, we're hoping that y'all are certainly checking, your units with some regularity so that it's not, you don't find out about it until, say, 40 days after it happened. We're kind of hoping that y'all are actually checking your units on a regular basis. Mr. Moran, did you want to have comment on this?
I believe he dropped off, Mark.
Okay, Ford, you had a comment?
Yeah, just in response to his comments earlier, I just want to kind of point out that, the department makes an effort to regulate through a reasonable standard. The concern that if somebody vandalized an EVSE location, specific charger, or anything else, our enforcement division is not going to typically go after somebody day one because a charger was damaged. There's an opportunity to take it offline as you get into here, everything else. Like we really do try to operate within those reasonable standards. Outside of somebody damaged it last night, it got reported by somebody, does not mean that you're automatically getting fined by the department for your EVSE charger being out of operation or anything.
To add on to that, enforcement, when they get a complaint, they're going to investigate that complaint, and they're going to contact you. So, if you tell them that that's what happened, it was some kind of vandalism situation, and you just discovered it. I'm not going to speak for how enforcement decisions, whether or not they're going to go forward on something, but as Ford said, You know, we're reasonable people over here. And the investigator is going to take that into account, and he or she is going to make a recommendation to the enforcement attorney as to whether or not to go forward on the case. Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know if we have anybody on from enforcement that could speak to it.
Yeah. Do we have anybody from enforcement?
I'm here. This is Rebecca Burkhalter. I'm a senior prosecutor for the Enforcement Division. And I just want to echo what Mark and Mr. Strawn are saying, that yes, we can't stop a complaint from being filed on this particular issue, but our investigators will reach out to you. And if you explain it's this type of an issue and that you're fixing it, that's not a situation where we would issue a fine, because our goal is usually compliance. So just to verify what Mark and Ford are telling the group.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay, thank you. So are there any other questions along that line or related to 96.71? And again, I want to remind everybody, if you've got proposed language that you want to put in here, you want to have us consider, then please submit it. You know, we're not the oracles on this thing. You know, this is why the legislature, you know, had the department create this stakeholder work group. You all are the subject matter experts. You know, so, you know, we want to make sure that we are coming up and crafting the best set of rules that we possibly can for the public and for the industry. So do not hesitate to bring us with some suggested language that you think could work better than what we have. We're working off of all the information that we have, that we've gotten from the committees, and that we've gotten from the bills, and that we've gotten from research that we've done ourselves, and even looking at some of the other states that have drafted their own set of rules. But this is Texas. We like to do things, you know, kind of our way. We're going to adopt some stuff that we think makes sense that other states have done. But we also have our own way of doing things, and this state is a trailblazer. We like to think of ourselves as a trailblazer in regulation, and we're here to work with y'all. You know, so, you know, again, you know, if you've got something that you want us to consider, you know, now's not the time to be shy. Let us know, and if you don't want to let us know orally at this meeting, you can certainly send us proposed language on our website. And we're more than happy to take a look at that, you know, because we want the same things that you want. We want the same things that the public wants. And as an EV owner, I really want to make sure that these things, these rules are as good as they possibly can be, because, you know, I like my EV and I want to keep on using it. Okay. So,
Mark, let me just jump in, Mark. This is Steve Bruno,
sure.
and remind everybody, you know, this is the first cut. Once we publish these in the Texas Register, we'll have that 30-day period for you and anyone else to make those written comments as well. And then there's going to be another opportunity for public comment when these come before the commission. So please know and understand that you may have some suggestions you want to make. They may not be ready today, but we've got at least 2 more opportunities for those to come in.
Absolutely. Okay. So any more questions or comments related to 96.71? I think EV Go had a comment where, well, no, actually it wasn't you all. It was somebody who had mentioned whether or not the providers themselves would have the stickers. And I'm trying to remember who that was.
I think that was the comment we heard from on the phone this morning, Mark.
Oh, yeah. I think it was Walmart. I'm sorry.
Yes.
You know, at this particular juncture, as you'll see when we get to 96.80, the stickers, the provider is more than likely going to be purchasing the stickers from the department, unless we find that another option works better. But at this particular point, I believe FMQ does it that way, so I think we're going to be doing it that way too. Okay. Again, 96.71, going once, going twice. Okay, moving on to 96.72. Now, this one here, it does come from statute 2311.0306. We kind of modified it a little bit, which I am kind of wondering whether or not we should, but basically, you know, you read this in tandem with 2311.0306, and the provider has to remove any damage, and we had some discussion about recalled charging units that pose a safety risk to the public. Now, that language with regard to recalled units was something that was added. Our executive director had mentioned that a while back, and I don't know if you all, get notices from the manufacturers of these units that they're being recalled or not. Certainly, y'all can tell us that. But we want to make sure that any of these types of units are removed from the use of the public, and I do recognize that EVgo had said to remove the word access, and I think they're correct. It may be an unnecessary term. We'll certainly discuss it within the group, but I think you're right, EVgo. It should probably be prevents the use of the damaged or recalled charging unit by the public and remove the word access. Are there any objections to that? Okay, hearing none, then the bit team will talk about it, but I think that's a good deletion there. Okay. And also, you remove the damaged or recalled unit from the provider's digital network of available units. Okay, Mr. Donahue, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I'm the on the work group, the representative of the EV owning public. So I was very glad to see this clause, number 2, removing the damaged units from the app. That's one of the biggest frustrations of the people I talk with in terms of going to get their cars charged. That your app says something's available and you arrive at the charging station, and in fact there's no current car getting charged there, but the unit doesn't work. And so by requiring this element right there, I think that's going to address one of the 3 main issues I think I've heard, at least from the EV owning public so far, and that is reliability and some notification. So I hope that gets implemented. I hope it's easy to implement by the providers, and I hope it's effective and increasing the reliability. So that's my comment there.
Appreciate it. Question to the folks out here. Are there any issues with what Mr. Donahue brought up with your digital networks and removing those units from the network? Okay, I'm not hearing anything, so I'm assuming that there are no issues that are related to that. Is that correct? Okay.
I'm going to need to go back and check on this one and see how we treat it currently and what this would require.
Okay. And being an EV user myself, I have come to locations, and I generally only use one brand, and that's Electrify America, only because I get it free for 3 years. But they're usually pretty good on their digital network to note that unit charger number 6 is unavailable. They'll usually say that. I don't know how the other providers are, but I can at least speak to that one, that it kind of works. And I'm not trying to advertise Electrify America, but if you're getting free electricity, I can't pass it up. Okay. Any other questions, comments, or potential edits associated with 96.72? Okay. Moving on. Record keeping requirements in 96.75. And why did that change? That color change? I do not know. Okay, this is record keeping requirements in 96.74. Basically, we are just requiring that the provider maintain and make accessible to department personnel records relating to installation, maintenance, inspection, and calibration of EVSE for 3 years. Okay. Any questions or comments related to that? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Of course, I just changed earplugs. Can you all still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. My earbud was running out of power, so I had to switch to another one. Okay. All right. 96.74. Any other questions, comments, or possible edits? Okay, not hearing anything. We're going to get ready to move on. Again, these record keeping requirements are what we're going to be probably focusing in on in the first few years of the program, because we're not going to be doing necessarily third-party testing at this particular time. So if field inspections or a department investigator is making a formal request to see your records, these are the records that we would want you to maintain for a 3-year period. Okay. All righty. Moving on to fees. The fees, as you see, 96.80. And let me make this bigger again. Initial registration is going to be $30 per connector / plug. Okay, and again, the registration number is going to be the same for the unit. Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that we are anticipating the registration number, the provider will have the registration number, and that number will flow down to all of the charging units. Okay, so yes, the statute says that every charging unit has to be registered, but the number, the registration number, will be the same number for all those charging units that are under the umbrella of the provider themselves. Okay. Any questions or comments related to that? Okay. Renewal is going to be $25 for the existing charging unit per connector plug. The sticker is $1 per sticker that goes on every unit. Then, of course, if you want to replace your existing registration certificate, it's $25. And then, of course, the late renewal fees, those are all covered. And the bad check fees are all covered under Chapter 60. Those rules have been in place for quite some time, and they're the same for each program. Okay. Any questions related to the registration fees? Questions or edits? Questions? Okay. Hearing none. Moving forward. 96.83 is basically taken from the statute from SB 1001. These are the fee policies that are already in statute. Okay. And you'll find that in 2311.0304. So that's basically where these are coming from. I think we added a little bit extra when we were talking about the receipts, and we've had some discussion related to the receipts. We're following the NIST requirements related to what's on the receipts, and then we added a little bit extra related to 9624 and 9670. And the 9670 is just basically the information that we wanted to have included related to how to file a complaint with the department. Okay. Any questions, comments, or edit related to this particular section? Okay, Mr. Donahue.
I've got one. This was another big concern of EV owners that I've surveyed, and it looks like it addresses it. it's a very complex pricing calculation that I realize that, in terms of, high demand and demand charges, I mean, how do you really price all that? So I hope that the EV charging companies take it upon themselves to, educate the, the consuming charging public that, the prices are going to be high in times of high demand, and maybe try to shape the demand of the charging units into times when there's more available electricity, prices are more reasonable. But I know that demand charges can be very punitive, and I don't know how on earth you would figure out pricing on this, but I'm sure you will. But the consumer should understand, and hopefully the companies will help to educate the consumers and push that demand to more available times.
And folks, I believe that's covered in NIS 44 in their recorded representations section, is it not? Well, I didn't hear that. Did somebody say something?
No, I think you're good.
Okay. If I'm reading that particular section of the NIST handbook, I think, Mr. Donahue, that may be covered. One question that I might have is for y'all who are, going to be installing a lot of these charging units. Are y'all working out some kind of contract with the generation entities to try to get bulk pricing on electricity, or is that something that's not available to y'all? Anybody?
I think I'm going to say that that's probably somewhat business sensitive information in terms of like how we do our yeah. So I'm gonna yeah.
I think the silence to Mark's question gives us the information we need. We can move on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to pry into any proprietary stuff. I was only assuming, just simply, because I used to work for the Public Utility Commission and I did electric regulation, so I can only assume that is probably what's going on. But we will move on.
All right.
Okay, then we're going to move to 96.90. This is just basically standard language related to administrative penalties and sanctions in the event that y'all happen to run afoul of our rules, regulations, and statutes. So this is just standard language that appears across our programs. Just letting you know, we may have to slap your hands if you run afoul of either the code, an order of the commission or executive director, or any of our rules, and that you would be subject to the administrative penalties that are noted under Chapter 51 of the Occupations Code, or the sanctions, or both. So that's just standard language. Any comments or questions on that section? Okay, hearing none. 91, same thing. It's just, lays out where the department's enforcement authority comes from, and of course comes from 2311 Occupations Code, Chapter 51, and any other rules and regulations that allow the department to enforce its rules and state law. Okay. Last thing, basic subchapter G deals with various technical requirements, and mainly it's the requirements that we are adopting by reference into this rule chapter. Obviously, if we decided to take all this stuff individually, this rule chapter would probably be about 400 pages long, and that's just not feasible. So we are adopting as part of this rule chapter, as you can see, NIS 44 and 130, the National Electric Code, Article 625 of that. Those rules and regulations, are going to be part of this. And then also Texas accessibility standards that we administer, here at the TDLR. Those standards are going to apply for the deployment of charging units, and providers are going to be required to follow that, as well as all the other regulations that are associated with these publications. Okay. Are there any other publications, regulatory publications that y'all think that we may need to include in this list? This is kind of what the bid team came up with. Certainly after talking to the committees, but just the research that we've done as well. Are there any other ones that you think may be necessary? Okay, hearing none, that pretty much wraps up the draft rules as we have them right now. We have gotten your input, and the bid team is going to go back, and we are going to meet and discuss the information that you all have provided us today. We certainly appreciate everything that y'all have provided today, and certainly provided during the course of this rulemaking project. And we certainly expect that you're going to give us even more information that, as I said, is going to make this rule chapter really, really good. We do know that there's other states that are watching what it is that we're doing. So we certainly want to, that's another reason why we want to create the best possible rule chapter we possibly can, because we certainly expect that there's other states that are going to be, following the Texas trail. So y'all are not just helping, us here in Texas, but I think you're helping a good number of other states develop their rules too. So again, thank you very much. Ford, do you have anything else you might want to add?
Well, if I can get my video started. Thank you. Michael Strawn, compliance. No, I mean, Mark, you did a fantastic job of closing that out with everything. What Steve Bruno said earlier, our Deputy Executive Director, this is our first cut at this. They're still going to go out for public comment. We're going to make changes based on this. And we're going to be, this big regulatory family moving forward. This is our first draft of these. They're going to continually evolve. And that's what we want to do, is work with you all to make this a regulatory environment that is safe for the public, that's easy to use for the public, and it's not overly burdensome on regulations. I know Mark listed, anything from electrical code to NIST and in our own rules, but in reality, we really do want to try and keep this as slim as possible, allow you all to succeed in this environment. I really do appreciate all of your feedback. I've taken over this bit team recently, as I just moved to being a manager in our new division over here, or moved to being a manager in our compliance division. And so, I've done a lot of catch up. There's been a lot of great information that's been put out there so far, and we wouldn't have these rules where they are today without the input, the hard work, and dedication from our work group here. So I really do appreciate everything y'all done to help us get here. And we'll certainly go back, take into account everything y'all provided us today, and we'll try to get the best set of rules out there before public comment that we possibly can.
All right. Thank you. Excellent job, Mark. Thanks for walking us through that. Thank you, all work group members, for your participation today. We are going to have another meeting after our comments put in, and so we'll add that for our agenda items for the next work group meeting. Are there any other agenda items that a work group member would like to recommend besides reviewing comments that we get?
First of all, I wanted to thank everybody, the department and all the working group members. This is Jamie with Awesome Energy. I just wanted to bookmark for next time to discuss the ADA requirements, because I mean, we do everything we can to make sure that we have ADA friendly charging so that people that need it can charge, but you don't want a space used up that's marked as handicapped by a non-EV user just using that. So we've done it where we have two spots. That's not always feasible for smaller parking lots. So if we can discuss that next time or discuss it offline or something, just to make sure that you can get the intent, which is to allow, follow the ADA requirements, but also not make it where you have, nobody wants to offer that because it wouldn't make the money back as a charging station. So I don't know how mobile providers have addressed that.
Jamie, let's, we can definitely have that as an agenda item, and we can have our expertise from our staff talk about that, and let's have a discussion about it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Great suggestion. Thank you. Any other agenda items we'd like to add? Okay, excellent. Well, we will leave it to the advisory board team to reach out to all the work group members for the next date and time. That's going to be dependent on submission to the Texas Register. We will, of course, keep you all updated on that. And so we'll hold off on picking a specific time. We'll hold off on picking a specific time for the next meeting. And we'll just have everyone get in touch with you. Along those lines, you all have been working with Anna up to this point, and I wanted to quickly introduce the newest member to the advisory board team, Mr. Alex Ortiz. Alex is going to be taking over for this particular work group, so you all will be hearing from him in the future. He's no stranger to TDLR. He joins us from our anti-trafficking unit, and we're very excited to have him in this role. Sure. With that, we will adjourn the meeting. It is 4:01 p.m. on May 23rd, 2024.